concentrated power of will. 5% pleasure, 50% pain, 100% reason to remember the name.
Get hype, everyone. Welcome to the Week 3 edition of the Fantasy Weekend Warriors Fantasy Football Podcast. Yes, it is still a podcast. Yes, it's a hit. I think I've reached 100 views as a YouTube subscriber. Thanks to you guys. You're the only 10 people that watch it. So besides Chris T, who watches it 75 times, which gets me to 100. So thank you, Chris. Hey, what an exciting week 2. I'm back from my honeymoon and back in my kitchen. So you can see I've returned to my normal, boring life. And had a great week 2 victory against my brother Jake. He hasn't slept since Monday night. He's been up, and he is just not happy about that loss. So a lot of storylines out of week 2, and we'll get into some of those as we start the podcast. So listen, first week 3 matchup. Well, you know what? First, let me tell you how I did in week 3 with my predictions, or in week 2 of my predictions. So I went 3-2. That's a strong follow-up to a 1-4 prediction in week 1, and that takes me to 4-6 on the year. So still have to dig myself out of a hole, but we will get there. So slowly but surely, I'm improving. So the Turnersville Sportsbook is 4-6 on the season. Heading into the week 3 matchups, the first one I'm going to start with is No Doubting Thomas versus the Wrecking Crew. So Terry had some injuries coming into the regular season, obviously losing Jerick McKinnon and having to rely on some of these questionable running backs. But hey, look, he sits in second place at 2-0. So fantasy football a lot of times is who your matchup is and kind of your schedule. So Terry scored the 3rd least amount of points last week, but his opponent scored the 2nd least amount of points last week. Dean, on the other hand, scored the 2nd most points last week and lost and finds himself at 1-1 thanks to him going against Chris T and the magical 175-point performance by Todd. So moving into this matchup, I think Dean still has a very strong team. He's running back 2 has been his question mark. Ajayi, he's scored in every week so far. 2 touchdowns in week 1, 1 touchdown in week 2. He's questionable as of this podcast. So what's he going to do? Is he going to plug in Marlon Mack? Is he going to make a pickup? I believe there's a trade pending right now for Isaiah Crowell, but I think he plays Thursday night, so I don't think he's going to be able to use him. So he has some decisions to make at running back 2. Terry, won last week. Like I said, didn't score many points, but Odell Beckham had a bad game. T.Y. Hilton had an okay game. Adrian Peterson didn't do anything. So some of these, and he also didn't have Leonard Fournette, so he has him back. He also has Zach Ertz now getting his quarterback back. Chris Godwin has been good so far. So I think that, things are looking up here for the Wrecking Crew. It's a tough matchup. Dean, although he has that question mark at the running back 2 position, he's pretty strong everywhere else. I picked him to win in week 2, and he let me down. I've picked against Terry the first 2 weeks, and he's won the first 2 weeks. So it's a big reason why my record is the way it is. But I'm going to stick with my gut on this. Like I said, Terry's had some fortunate luck here the first couple weeks, and now he runs into a tough team in No Doubting Thomas. So I'm going to go with Dean, with Aaron Rodgers, Michael Thomas, Ezekiel Elliott, and company to get back in the win column and move to 2-1. So, moving to the second matchup, we have Weapon X-Men, the banged up X-Men, versus Saved by the Bell, which is obviously Zach, who is not getting saved by any bells right now. Luckily for him, he does have James Conner, who's kind of keeping him afloat. So, right now, Otley's team is in the bottom, in the basement of the league, and it's only fitting that I said that he had a great draft and he had a great team this year. Usually I give him a C-, and he ends up winning the championship. This year is kind of the opposite. So I put the Turnersville Sportsbook jinx on Otley so far this year. So listen, right now, Ajayi might not play. So Otley's number 2 running back of Corey Clement looks a little bit better. Without Freeman, he's just really, really struggling at the running back position. He has Kenyon Drake, who's probably a good number 2. But obviously Clement, Eckler, and are the only other 2 running backs on his roster here besides Drake and Devonta Freeman. So Otley's really drawing at straws there at the running back position. Zach, even without Le'Veon Bell, is the beneficiary here. He has Connor, which we talked about, but he's the beneficiary of the Freeman injury because he has Tevin Coleman on his team. He also has Alex Collins right now on his bench, so Zach has a pretty good abundance of running backs here with even without Le'Veon Bell. Got Carson Wentz back this week. I'm still going to give Otley the advantage at quarterback. He's got Tom Brady, but Carson Wentz at home versus the Colts is a very good plus matchup there. Otley really does have a good chance to win this game, I'll say, because I think Antonio Brown's going to have a nice week after all this missing practice. He's frustrated, blah, blah, blah. Squeaky wheel gets the grease. He's obviously the best wide receiver in football, if not top three. So I think that Otley is kind of due. I'm struggling with this one. And it's funny because Yahoo says it's a 50-50 chance. I think I'm going to take Zach in this matchup. I might regret this, but again, Otley's wide receiver 3 is Pierre Garçon. He has Deshaun Jackson, who he picked up, was a great pickup, but can he really keep doing what he's doing with Fitzmagic? I might eat my words. He might have another 100-yard receiving performance and a touchdown, but I'm going to go with Zach in a tough matchup. Yes, that means Otley falls to 0-3, but maybe he'll pull it out. We'll see. Moving on to the third matchup. Balls deepest, sitting in first place versus eating W's. I got to give some beef with Brett, man. I picked on the win last week. I would have been 4-1 for the week, but he sat Patrick Mahomes, who almost scored 50 points. He basically almost had half of the points that Brett put up for the week. I got to give him a little bit of a... Brett gets the dummy horn for making that mistake. Yes, he has Andrew Luck. How do you bench Mahomes after that great performance he had week 1? Comes out and scores 6 touchdowns. Brett is kicking himself. But right now he has him in his lineup. That's probably a good move. Brett's team, I said the same thing. I said the same thing about my dad's team. Running back 2, it's a question mark. Derrick Henry. I mean, that's your number 2 guy. I think he'd probably get you like 4 or 5 points every week, and there's nobody else on his roster. Chris Carson, Peyton Barber, Tariq Cohen. None of these guys instill a lot of confidence in you. So as long as you got these 4 wide receivers, I guess, Julio, Tyreek Hill, obviously 2 top 10, if not top 5, potentially Tyreek Hill could be. Demaryius Thomas and Golden Tate. So you have really good wide receiver depth. But, man, I hate to see what happens when Alvin Kamara goes on by. I hope I play Brett that week. Pearson's got a really well-rounded team. David Johnson starting out of the gate slow, but Pearson is able to sustain some wins, which is obviously a good thing for him. I think David Johnson will get back on track this week against the Bears defense. Ask Jake about the Bears defense. They're tough. They're very tough. Hey, listen, I think that David Johnson will have another week where he's subpar. He'll probably have somewhere between 8 and 12 points. But he does have Cam Newton, Keenan Allen, Brandon Cooks, Jarvis Landry. Brandon Cooks, I'll go back to him for a second. I thought he was going to have a tough year. So far, he is playing really well for the Rams. We'll see if that continues. So, looking at this matchup, Pearson also has Gio Bernard, which isn't a plus matchup now with Mixon being out, but obviously he has Mixon on his bench, so it doesn't really change too much. I'm going to go with Brett. I'm going to stay in the Flames. Look, Brett would have won last week had he started Pat Mahomes. Pearson's been good but not great. He's been scoring enough points to beat his opponent. I think he's running into a strong opponent here in Brett. David Johnson's coming out of the gate slow, like I said. Pearson will take 2-1, I think, with the slow start from David Johnson. So listen, this is the matchup of the week. Pearson versus Brett. Matchup of the week runner-up. And listen, these two have a nice rivalry going back. I think Pearson might have sent some naked pictures to Brett after a couple was wins. It's a little weird. I don't really know what they got going on with each other. But in any event, I made the matchup of the week runner-up because we have D's Nuts versus Rolls Royce. Jake versus Kevin. What a rivalry these two have developed in the league. And listen, Kevin, known as the big mouth of the league, starting out, 1-1, and he's obviously having like I called it last week. I said he come out of the gate slow and go 0-1. Say he bounce back in week 2 and win and go 1-1. So it's one thing, even though I'm 4-6 in my predictions, I've been right about Kevin so far. Jake, I edged him by a 1.5 last week thanks to the Bears defense. Jake is the best 0-2 team in the league for sure. He has 281 points scored for the season, which would make him, if I do some quick math, 3rd in the league in points. 1.5 behind Brett. Actually, I'm sorry. Yeah, 1 total point behind Brett. And he has no wins. So, Jake, 281 points scored for the season, 0-2. Terry, 224 points for the season, 2-0. It's all about who you play sometimes, boys. That's fantasy football for you. It's not fair. So, all that matters right now is this matchup with Kevin. Kevin, Drew Brees at Atlanta. Great matchup. Adam Thielen at home against Buffalo. Great matchup. Adam Thielen. Gotta love him. Repping it right now. Had a great week last week. They tied the Packers thanks to Daniel Carlson. I digress. Listen, I'm going to move through this matchup. Dalvin Cook at home against Buffalo. Yes, he's banged up, but he's going to get in the end zone for the first time this season this year. Kareem Hunt's got a good matchup. Kevin's got Chris Thompson. I really, really, really like Kevin's matchups. Jake, Ben Roethlisberger at Tampa Bay Monday night. I love it. DeAndre Hopkins at home against the Giants. I love it. Mike Evans also playing Monday night against Pittsburgh. He's going to stay in the Flames. Barkley's the weirdest player I've ever seen. 14 catches for 80 yards. I've never seen Eli or anybody in that matter. Every time he dropped back to pass, he had the defense in his face, and he's just ding, dunk, ding, dunk. Barkley's going to be interesting. Can he overcome that Giants team? Look, Jake has a good team. I got to take these nuts in week 3, and Jake's going to be kicking himself as I'm saying this, but I'm telling you, the matchups say it. I like Jake's team. Royce Freeman, the mascot of this team, has gotten off to a slow start, and that could be the difference, that 4th-round pick of Royce Freeman that's kind of holding Jake down. And I'm going to take the good news for Jake is a lot of these teams have started out 1-1. You know, there's not 4 teams in the league. They're 2-0. You only got 2 teams in the league, so the standings are going to be tight all season. Moving on to my matchup, Darnold six-pack versus, I don't remember what his name is. Who am I playing? The league's, I want to say, number 1 point scorer, and yes, I'm verified on that. The number 1 point scorer, Todd, through 2 weeks, ran into the buzzsaw week 1 against Brett. Then he scored 175 points last week, so Chris finds himself in a matchup with me, myself, Darnold six-pack. Had a terrible week 1. Awful. Put me in the trash can. 75 points. I even thought I had a shitty team. All of a sudden, come back. Kenny Golladay seems like he might be a stud. Marshawn Lynch playing really well in Oakland. Keenan Cole making a name for himself with that sick Odell Beckham one-handed catch. Got the 2 studs at running back with Melvin Gordon and Christian McCaffrey. Sammy Watkins is alive. Stafford's back. My team, even Amari Cooper had 100 yards last week. So my team had a good week. I scored over 140 points. I was able to beat Jake. It was a great week for me. I'm not ready to ride off into the sunset and say I'm back 100%, but I feel a lot better now than I did in week 1 when I did it very bad. Chris, he has a great team. He's got the best wide receiver core in the league. Brett might have something to say about that, but depth-wise, I really think, Chris, at least the top 3. You got Will Fuller, who's been phenomenal so far. Smith-Schuster, who's been phenomenal so far. And Stephon Diggs, he's just... Yes, I can dig it. Stephon Diggs, he could be, you're going to call me crazy, he will be a top 3 wide receiver this year if he can stay healthy. What a pick that would be for Chris. He's got 3 touchdowns already on the season, a 2-point conversion, a 100-yard performance. The only thing stopping him is his health. He's never really played a full 16-game season. He's always got a nagging hamstring or something. He's a playmaker. Have you seen the commercial? Everything sticks to Stephon Diggs' hands. All right, I digress. Listen, Chris has some good matchups this week. I think Jordan Howard's going to beat up on the lowly Cardinals. I think Jimmy Graham has kind of found his motion. He's got Lamar Miller, Will Fuller, and Deshaun Watson at home against the Giants. What I'm going to have to hope for is some of these teams get up big against these crappy teams and just kind of grind the clock out and hold on to a lead. Listen, last week I thought I was going to get trounced, and I came out with a miraculous victory. This week, I got to hope that Kenny Golladay stays in the Flames. He's playing New England Sunday night. Him and Stafford, a little connection. Golladay, psh, 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 it could be so nice. That's what I'm hoping for. Chris, you got as good a shot as anybody to beat me this week. Yahoo gives you a 53% chance. I am going to take Darnold six-pack. to prevail and beat Todd. It's going to be a close one. It's going to be a good one, guys. Hope you enjoyed the predictions, okay? It's going to be a fun week 3, and I'm going to keep spitting out podcasts. No guest star this week. It's just me, myself, and I. Next week, I'll get you guys. Hey, have a nice week.